What's the slogan?
It's like meth. We're on it.
We're on it. Yeah.
Like we're on dealing with it.
Yeah, that's so dumb.
It's so funny.
It's very funny.
That's actually so fun.
Alright, so when I was 12 years old, I lived in a house and there's about 100 pine trees. That was our front yard. And my parents my mom hated the pine trees, so we tore all of them down. And in the front yard, it was just mud. When it would rain, it would just become this big puddle of mud and mush, and it was kind of disgusting. But as a 12-year-old with a bunch of kids living on the street with me, we absolutely loved this big mud pile pit. So we would play in it all day long. We'd come out, we would be so messy and dirty. We would be caked from head to toe with just mud. We would track mud into our houses and we would get into a lot of trouble. We would usually walk away with some injuries because, you throw some mud and there's a rock in it. You jump on someone and hit them with an elbow in the face. So we would come out, we'd get in trouble, we'd be dirty, it would take forever to get all the mud off, and we would be injured. Yet every day we would still just go back and play in this mud. We absolutely we loved it. It was fun. We would have so many funny memories. And it was always just worth the aftermath to go and just jump into this big mud pit. And a lot of times we don't realize it, but ministry is kind of like the mud pit. Ministry is so messy. It leaves you with a lot of bruises. It's fun. You meet people, you build relationships, you sometimes get in trouble. It's just a good time that for some reason we keep coming back to, even though we know that at the end of the day, we're going to leave beat up, we're going to leave messy, we're going to leave a little bit worse than when we walked in that morning. And it's so confusing. Why do we want to do this? Why are we so called to this life of hardship? And Paul answers these questions. He goes through these different questions in 2 Corinthians 4. And so that's what we're going to be looking at today. If you guys want to flip there and just look at me when you're ready. All right. So the 4th chapter of 2 Corinthians, I've kind of broken it up as it's Paul's just different points of what ministry is, and he kind of just walks through the different, just helping people gain their understanding of what they're getting into. So looking at the first 2 verses, he says, "Therefore, having this ministry, by the mercy of God, we do not lose heart, but we have renounced disgraceful, underhanded ways. We refuse to practice cunning or to tamper with God's word, but by the open statement of the truth, we would commend ourselves to everyone's conscience in the sight of God." And so these first 2 verses show the calling of ministry. When you're called into ministry and follow what the Lord is leading you to do. And it's really interesting. I don't think we often think what Paul probably felt like in those nights, those nights when you're alone, you're by yourself, and you kind of just remember those embarrassing moments, those moments where you just really messed up. Those moments of regret, and you're like, I just can't believe I did that. I can't believe the things I've done. I really just picture Paul in those nights after a day of ministry. He's in his room, he's in his cell, wherever he may be, and those thoughts creep in. I used to kill people. I used to watch over the murders of people, and it's really caused me to stop and think who were you before you were called into ministry? What type of person were you? I liked to party, I would go out drinking, I thought I knew everything, I was arrogant. And then that's why Paul says, it is by the mercy of God that we have this ministry. It is by the mercy of God that he has let us enter into ministry and to minister to his people. He continues to say that now, so that's who we were before, but who are you now? We have renounced disgraceful, underhanded ways. We refuse to practice cunning or to tamper with God's word. Now, by the grace and by the mercy of God, he's letting us enter into his ministry here on earth, his ministry of bringing heaven to earth. And we should be so humbled by the fact that we have done absolutely nothing to earn it. So the first part of this calling to ministry is going in and entering in with such humility of I did nothing to earn this. I did not outshow anyone. I didn't do the best on some test. I should not be here. But by the mercy of God, He has given me this ministry that is specific to me and who I am. And I need to know that if I'm not humble going in now, and Paul shows us throughout the letter, this chapter, that we will be humbled so quickly. Because ministry is not some fun activity, some fun hobby, but it is a life and it is hard. So Paul continues now by, after explaining the calling and your calling, of what the mission really is. So in verse 3, he says, "And even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For what we proclaim is not of ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, with ourselves as your servants, for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, 'Let light shine out of the darkness,' has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." So, a lot of times, at least like with the people I've been around, I hear them think that it's this battle, like ministry is this battle against people. Or like, oh, the people I work with, or we're not successful because of the people I work with, or the resources, or the location I've been put in, or the people that they're trying to minister to. But we see here, and even flipping to Ephesians 6:12, where Paul again explains this battle, he says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places." So we need to understand that we are in a war, and it talks about the God of this world, so Satan, is veiling the people who are perishing. He knows he's defeated. He understands that he is defeated by the cross, and so before Jesus comes back, he wants to take as many souls with him. And to do so, we see when we look at the world, the brokenness and the hurt and the pain that comes from that. And a lot of times we get so angry with the people in our lives, or the people, the unbelievers who aren't listening, or the things that unbelievers are doing in politics, or in different nonprofit campaigns. And we think that we're fighting against them, when really that is not our battle. Our battle is against Satan. And picture a war, because it's truly a spiritual warfare. And war, people fight because they're passionate, because they believe in it. And that's why all of us are here at Moody. But when you leave a war, there's casualties, there's collateral damage, there's pain, and there's brokenness, and that is what we're fighting in. And that is what happens to the ministers of the gospel. We leave broken, a little bit beat up, and there's still so much hope for us, and Paul continues to show that. But it's not this pretty romanticized spiritual warfare. And so, as we understand our mission is the people. Our mission are the people of God who right now are blinded by Satan, and our battle is against Satan himself. We are not here trying to fight people. We're not trying to fight politicians or other people's beliefs, other religions, other cultures. We're here for them and to help them see the light of God. And Paul continues to talk about this as he says, "For what we proclaim is not of ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, with ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, 'Let light shine out of the darkness,' has shown our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." And I think that's so beautiful. As our mission, as we continue on in our mission, the same light that God said, "Let light shine out of the darkness," the darkness of creation, now is in our hearts as we shine that light out into the darkness of this world. And that is our mission, is to continually shine that light, that same powerful light that God first shone into the darkness, into this broken world. And so we have our calling, we have received the mission, and now we need to understand what we're getting into. And so in verse 7, Paul kind of prepares us for that. So he says, "But we have this treasure in jars of clay, to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not driven to despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our mortal flesh. So death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. And this little paragraph of this chapter shows, one, just the upside down kingdom of Christ, where there's just things that contrast, like the servant God, the fully human, fully man. It's following that theme, where Paul is showing that two very different opposite things are happening, but also not happening at the same time. And he starts with, we have this treasure in jars of clay. So we're the jars of clay. That vase that grandma loved on her dresser, and you and your sibling come running around the corner too quick and you hit the dresser, and that vase just shatters. It hit rug too. It shouldn't have shattered, but it shatters everywhere. It's broken. That's because that vase is so fragile. And we are this fragile vase. Our bodies are this fragile vase that is holding, as Paul says, the surpassing power that belongs to God. And this is supposed to be a testimony of the power of Christ as people look at us as we go through ministry, whether we're just mentally drained and fried and tired, whether our bodies are just tired and broken down, that they see that the surpassing power of the Lord continues to sustain us in ministry, continues to carry us, continues to give us hope and life. He goes on to say the different things that are going to happen to us as we go into ministry and just follow Christ. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. And I thought this was cool because the word afflicted here is the same word that's used in Mark 3:9 when the crowds are pushing around Jesus and there's so many people, where Jesus is afflicted, but he's never crushed by those people. And so we are afflicted, we have pressure, we are pressed in against, but we're never crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. And I know for me, when I look at the state of the world and I even just walking down Michigan Avenue or most places in Chicago, you can just see the hopelessness of people and the brokenness and the hurt and pain. And I'm just Lord, why have you not done anything? And we can be perplexed about the situations and the tragedies that happen in the world, but we don't need to despair because we do know the victory that has come and will come again. We are perplexed, we are persecuted but not forsaken, struck down but not destroyed, always carrying around in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our bodies. And I just love that because Jesus experienced all these things with us. He was afflicted, he was perplexed, he was persecuted, and he was struck down. And that's where people see that in us. They see us persecuted and struck down, and they see that's where the death of Jesus. But they also see his resurrection power. They see the life of Jesus in us when we are not crushed, when we're not driven to despair, and when we're not forsaken, and when we're not destroyed. They see that resurrection power in us. And I love this as death is at work in us, and I never understood. I was what does that mean? How is that uplifting or what? But so he's writing to the Corinthians, so when he says life is at work in you, that would be to whoever you're ministering to. So while you toil day in and day out, while people tell you everything you're doing wrong, while maybe you're on the mission field in some dangerous country and you're physically being just beaten down, while death is at work in you, life is at work in the people that you are ministering to, because they see that light shining in your heart. They see the way the Lord surpassing power is inside your fragile body and sustaining you and keeping you upheld. This passage just brought me back, this chunk of the passage brought me back to last December. So when I was 18, 19, I did Moody Online and I ran a youth group. I ran a youth group and the youth pastor just preached. And so I got to know so many of the kids, especially the girls in the high school, middle school, because I would mentor them, take them out, and I was pretty close with all of them. And so last year I came to Chicago, and I went back in December, and I got to see some of the kids, and there was this one girl, I hadn't seen her yet. Her name was Emma. She was in 8th grade at that point. She was 12, total middle schooler, but she was also so fun and sweet. She was so loving. She genuinely lit up a room. Like, I'm not just saying that, she genuinely lit up a room. And she didn't have believing parents, but her friend brought her to youth group, and she was just so wanted to know, and like was so hungry for God. So I live in just this town in New York. It's like just like a white suburb. The houses made of like brick, and there's perfect lawns, you know, that type of neighborhood. And so like nothing ever really happens in this neighborhood or in this town. And one morning, December 15th, I had been home a couple days at that point. I wake up to the news, and there's Emma's face on the TV. And you just continue to watch as you see like what's unfolding. And I'm still very perplexed by it. But Emma, sweet little girl, no signs of any type of abuse, any type of weird family thing. They seemed like that normal suburban family. They were nice people. I've met them before. Her dad, out of nowhere, took a gun, shot her mom, shot her, 12-year-old Emma, and then shot himself. No signs where it's like, well, we had seen like she was a little off. She was a normal 12-year-old girl. And aside from my own heartbreak, I knew that high schoolers and middle schoolers were going to look at me with tear-stained faces and say, why? And I still don't have an answer. I don't think anybody has an answer. But when we look at this, we know that we are going to experience such heartbreak when we choose to love people and when we choose to enter into ministry. And I don't know why Emma's dad did what he did, but I do. It goes back to that spiritual warfare where Emma was she was talking about the Lord to her parents. She was out there like just talking to her middle school about it, and I guarantee Satan wasn't happy. And I will never truly know what happened. But like, we see that spiritual battle as we go into ministry, and we see the cost of that. We are going to love people, and we are going to get our hearts broken. And some people, even 12-year-olds, may end up dying because we are out there telling them about Jesus. And we know that even though we are afflicted and perplexed, persecuted and struck down, that is all we are. We are not destroyed. We don't despair. And that we can have the hope that Jesus will continue to sustain us, that death may be at work in us, but life is still at work in the people we are ministering to. And everybody knew Emma loved youth group. The youth pastor got to speak at her vigil. He got to give the whole town a lot of hope. He got to share who Jesus was. And so while tragedies happen and Satan may think he has won, we continue to press on. And so the next part, after we understand the mission of our calling, we can have hope. So starting in verse 13, Paul says, "Since we have the same spirit of faith, according to what has been written, I believed, and so I spoke. We also believe, and we also speak, knowing that he who has raised the Lord Jesus will raise us also with Jesus and bring us with you into his presence. For it is all for your sake, so that as grace extends to more and more people, it may increase thanksgiving to the glory of God." And so this just shows us that our work is not in vain, and that we can continue to hold the hope that what we are doing is truly being used by the Lord. Paul knows that even though his persecutions, his trials, his faith still leads to proclamation. And despite the circumstances, despite what he's going through, he believes, and so he also will speak. And verse 15 is something that really has sustained me this semester as I look at the tragedies of the world, where he says, "It is for your sake, so that as grace extends to more and more people, it may increase thanksgiving." Where it's so easy to say, this is broken, these people are in pain, this isn't being fixed. but the people I am allowed to minister to the people you're allowed to minister to in your PCMs, on your floor, on the streets of Chicago, the thousands of Christians who are now fighting in vocational ministry, grace continues to reach people every single day, and that is a hope that we can hold on to. That no matter how much pain we experience, how much pain the world seems to experience, grace continues to reach more people. The Lord continues to save souls, and every day someone new meets the Lord and comes to a saving faith. He talks about how that knowing that he who raised the Lord Jesus will raise us with Jesus and bring us with you into his presence. And again, you is talking to the people he's ministering to. So that Jesus will bring us, so us who are now Christians, plus the people we minister to, into the presence, into his presence. And that is our hope that we can hold firmly to, that our work is not in vain. And then, so the last part that Paul is trying to get at is the focus that now we can have. So starting in verse 16 through the end of chapter 4, he says, "So we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light, momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal." So this last part reminds me of Hebrews 12:2, where he says, "Looking to the Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross." And that's our focus, is for the joy that's set before us, for the glory that is coming. We follow so much in Jesus' footsteps in that way. Jesus knew he had to endure the cross for the joy that would come. And it talks about how this light momentary affliction is nothing compared to the glory that is coming. And it's almost like, it's shocking that Paul would say, this light momentary affliction. Like, that's what I think of when I get a shot. Like, it's just a light momentary affliction, it's okay. Like, but Paul, who's been beaten and put in jail and shipwrecked and run out of towns and beaten again and put in jail again, like, he's like, this is just a light momentary affliction. Like, this is nothing. This is like just getting a little flu shot compared to what is coming, to the glory that is coming. And in the same way, Jesus would not have been able to ascend to the Father and sit at his right hand if he had not gone through the cross and through his death and resurrection. We don't get to glory unless we follow in the same suffering that Jesus has, where we must go and love his people to the point where we know that we are going to suffer, we are going to be broken down. But our focus isn't on that. Our focus is on what will come from it. And when I think of glory, I don't know what heaven is going to be like, but I think of when we get there and you like walk in the gates or whatever it is, but you get to heaven and you look around and you see the faces of the people that the Lord has, by his mercy, allowed you to minister to, who the Lord has talked to you through, that you have removed the veil from their eyes that Satan has kept over them. I think of Emma sitting there, running up to me, and I could say, like, "Hey, how you doing?" And she's there, even though her becoming a Christian and me knowing her ended with me in a lot of pain, it would be so worth it, because I will see her face in glory. My parents aren't saved, and neither are my siblings, and like, Lord willing, one day they do come to know Jesus. When I see their face in heaven, the pain of living in this house with them all these years would be so worth it and would feel like nothing compared to being in glory with them. And that is the focus that Paul wants us to continue to hold on to, that we're here now, and there's a lot of things going on, there's a lot of things we can see, but that's not what we need to look to. We need to look to the things that are unseen, the things that are coming soon, because he says they're only momentary. This is only a momentary affliction. And that's the hope and focus we can hold on to. And so you guys have gone through the first part of Paul's ministry little checklist. You've all been called. You all have felt your calling. You've seen your change in who you are. And so you know the mission, you understand the mission, and you understand the pain that is coming. And you understand the hope and you understand the glory. And so now we need to go out there and know that ministry is messy. Ministry is like that giant mud pit that for some reason you keep jumping into because it's really fun. And you know you're going to be a little bruised and your parents might yell at you. And you're going to be scrubbing for hours trying to get all that mud off you. But ministry is messy. Loving people is messy and it hurts. But it's always worth it. Thank you. I forgot my whole conclusion. Don't put that in the notes.